Okay, for this particular one, you've got variables on both sides. It doesn't matter how you solve it. I always try to do positives, so I don't have to worry about flipping signs. But if you like to, some people always like to have their stuff on the right-hand side, or so the left-hand side. And in this case, if I wanted to have a positive, it would be on the right-hand side. So it doesn't matter how you solve it. I would go ahead and I would probably start by subtracting 5x from both sides. I get negative 2 is greater than or equal to 2x plus 4. Subtract the 4 from both sides. Get negative 6 is greater than or equal to 2x. Divide both sides by 2 and get negative 3 is greater than or equal to x. If it helps for you to rewrite it so that you have x is less than or equal to negative 3, that works as well. Okay, if you solved it the opposite way too, where you brought that negative 7 over to this side, you just end up having to flip your sign and you should get x is less than or equal to negative 3. Okay. So here I'm going to put a closed circle on negative 3 and an arrow to the left to signify all my solutions. When it comes to these compound inequalities, here I have negative 8 is less than negative x minus 5, which is less than or equal to 0. This is an and compound inequality. And all I want to do here is actually just work from the inside out. And I want whatever I do to undo the inside, I just have to do to all parts. So here I've got negative x minus 5. So the first thing that I would do is add 5 to both sides. But now there's 3 sides to add it to. So here I would get net 5 plus negative 8 is negative 3 is less than negative x, which is less than or equal to 5. Here I have to divide by negative 1, which means I have to flip my sign. And I'm going to be flipping all of my signs. So here when I divide that by negative 1, I'm going to get 3, and I'm going to do greater than x, which is greater than or equal to 5. We don't, negative 5. We don't like to leave it like this though. We always want it to be, when we write our ands, we really want it to reflect the number line. So I would rewrite this last part as negative 5 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 3. So basically I just took that whole thing and like flipped it around. Okay, did a rotation because I want it to reflect the number line and be transitive. Transitive meaning that negative 5 is less than x and negative 5 is less than or equal to 3. Okay. So here, if I really go ahead and graph this, I would put a closed circle on negative 5, a closed circle, a open circle on 3, and then connect them in the middle. Questions you have? Heart's desire to know? Yes, sir.
You have to flip the equation around.
Yeah, I mean, I would get into the habit of it. I would say if you are looking to go ahead and go on to like higher mathematics in your career, I would just get into the habit of that because they're going to want to see that. Like, in the end, is this really wrong? No. Would I mark it wrong if you forgot to do that? No. But I would say try to get into that habit because you might get to a point where you have a professor or you have a teacher who really wants you to do that. Good question. Other questions? Okay. Last one is an or here. The nice thing about or is we can just kind of solve them the way that we see them. We just have 2 different inequalities to solve here. So I can just focus on one at a time. I've got 3x minus 1 is equal to negative 1. Add 1 to both sides. Get 3x is less than 0. Divide by 3, and x is less than 0. Don't be afraid when you get 0 as an answer or part of your thing. Zeros are numbers, just like a 1 or a 2, right? They're perfectly good answers and correct. On this side, I have or, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. I get 2x is less than or equal or greater than or equal to 6. And then divide by 2, x is greater than or equal to 3. So my answer here is this x is less than or equal to 0, or less than 0, excuse me, or x is greater than or equal to 3. Ors will have those arrows opposite of each other, okay? Because it's not an in-between, it's not an and. Your ors will generally have your arrows opposite each other. Yes, they will. But then they're not technically connected. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's a good question. Sometimes you will have an or that will cross, and then really what the answer is generally all real numbers. Does that make sense? Because when they cross, if I were to do this and have these cross, if my symbols were different, and this was an or, even if this is open still. And remember that this represents all my solutions. That means that all numbers are my solutions. Does that make sense? Because everything's crossing, and then you could just say that all real numbers are the solutions. Okay. Good questions. Okay. Sad day. I don't know why this is not working for me. Okay, you have $20 to spend at the fair. Admission to the fair is $8, and each game costs $1.50 to play. Write an inequality to represent the number of games you can play, and then solve it. So, first thing I like to do is figure out my variable. What don't I know? How many games can I play? What variable would you like to use? G. And S. God, there's so many good choices. I heard G first. So I'm going to go G is the number of games I can play. Okay. So I want to write this inequality, and I'm comparing two things. And sometimes I think it helps. This one may be something that's a little bit more basic, but sometimes when you're not sure how to write things, I would write what you're comparing. So right now what you're comparing is the money you have to the money you can spend. And then once you write it out in words, it's easier to figure out what the symbol should be between the two. What should the symbol be if I'm comparing the money I have to the money that I can spend? Dollar, well, the dollar symbol could be my label, but I'm thinking more of those inequality symbols. Greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Greater than or equal to. The money that I have has to be more than or equal to the money I can spend, right? I cannot spend more than I have because they don't accept credit cards at the fair. Okay. So here, when I do that, then it's easier for me to plug in the stuff that I know. Like I know that I've got 20 bucks. Okay. And I know that that has to be greater than or equal to the money I can spend. What will I spend, and how do I write that out? Mason?
You can write it out as 8 plus 1.5G.
Yeah. Right? $8 to get in, and $1.50 for every game. Okay, and then I can go ahead and solve, and I get, 12 is less than or equal to 1.5G. And then if I think about 1.5 is really just 3 halves, so divide by 3, get 4, so I get 8 games, right? So I can play about 8 games, or 8 games exactly. Questions that you guys have? I think that's the last one. I think this is just old, what the assignment is. So I will go ahead and give you the assignment. I'm going to stop my recording.